In our class today, we will be continuing from where we left off in the last class. And so today, we will continue from the transfer of heat topic. So, it is a common conception, and it is something that which we notice in our daily life also, that if we have two bodies, suppose as I have shown here, one red, another blue. The red one is suppose the body which is hot, and the blue one is suppose which is a cold body. So it is something which we observe even in our daily life, that heat has the tendency to flow from the body which is hot to the body which is cold. That is to say that it will flow from the body which is at a higher temperature to the body which is at a lower temperature. Now this kind of heat transfer is not limited just to solids. The heat transfer can take place in other mediums as well, for example the liquids and the gases. But for different mediums, there are different methods in which the heat gets transferred. The transfer of heat primarily takes place in three different processes. We will be studying the processes in detail, but before that, just to list out, the processes are conduction, convection, and finally radiation. So these are the three primary processes by which heat gets transferred from one body to another, and it is possible for all the three states of matter, whether solid, liquid or gaseous. Now what is conduction? It is the process where the heat energy gets transferred from one molecule to another, but the actual molecules do not move. So if I draw, say for example here I am drawing a bar, and let me assume that this bar is made up of iron. So this is an iron bar, and if we look into this iron bar at the microscopic level, obviously these are made up of atoms and molecules of iron, let's say Fe. So suppose there is a molecule here, there is a molecule here, there is a molecule here, and so on. They are all arranged in the form of a linear chain. Now if some heat is supplied to one end of this bar, say heat is supplied to this end, so what will happen is, first of all, this molecule here, the one I am shading in black, that will get heated because it will absorb the heat from this source. This can be anything, this can be a flame of a candle or anything. So this molecule at this end will get heated. And what does happen when molecules do get heated? When the molecules, that is one individual molecule, gets heated, it starts to vibrate. It starts to vibrate faster. So it's like the molecule will vibrate left and right like this, and as in the process it absorbs more and more heat, it will vibrate even quicker. And in the process what will happen is, it will collide with this adjacent molecule. With this molecule it will collide, and in the process of collision, because it is already vibrating, this first molecule which absorbed the heat from the source will transfer a significant portion of that heat to this adjacent molecule. And now you can understand perhaps that how each and every time a molecule gets heated up, it gains energy, due to which it vibrates faster, and because of its enhanced vibration it collides with the adjacent molecules and transfers a part of that heat to the adjacent molecule. And like this, there will come a time when the heat from this end manages to travel all the way to the, say, right hand of the iron bar. So when that happens, we can say that the entire iron bar has been heated up. So this is how substances get heated by conduction. The heat gets transferred from the hot end. This is the hot or the heated end. It gets transferred from the hot end to the cold or the cooler end. And this entire transfer of heat takes place because of the vibrations of molecule. But yes, if this is the molecule, suppose, it will vibrate left and right about its mean position. Say this is its mean position. So about the mean position the molecule will vibrate left and right, but it will not, say for example, move from this position to some other position. That is not going to happen. If it does move, then we are no longer in the region of conduction, but we move into what is known as convection. So when heat transfers by the method of convection, yes, molecules do move, but we shall do that sometime later. First, after we are done with the process of conduction, let us now see which materials we call conductors and which material we call insulators. So how do we classify between these two types of substances? As you can see on the screen, one is the conductor, the other is the insulator. What is the main difference between them? Conductors allow heat to flow through them, whereas insulators do not allow heat to flow through them. That is the basic difference. Therefore, insulators are also said to be bad conductors or poor conductors. So if you look into some examples for conductors, that is the good conductors of heat, some of the examples of good conductors of heat include all kind of metals. All metals are good conductors of heat. Then comes silver. Silver is also one of the metals, and it is the best conductor of heat. When it comes to heat energy, there is no other metal or substance which can conduct heat as efficiently as silver. Some other good conductors of heat include the elements like copper, aluminium, we have iron, gold. So these are all good conductors of heat. Looking into the insulators, also known as the poor conductors or the bad conductors of heat, what are the substances which we can say are insulators? Well, these include glass, mica, cork, water, all kinds of plastics. These are examples of insulators, so poor conductors of heat. Air and water, the two most common substances of our daily life, are also very bad conductors of heat. We can do a very simple demonstration to show that air is not a good conductor of heat. What we can do is, we can take a matchstick, suppose this is a matchstick, and we can light one end of the matchstick. Now after that, we can hold this matchstick at a certain distance away from the wick of a candle. Suppose this is the candle and this is the wick of the candle, and this is the matchstick, and we hold it a certain distance apart. Say the distance is 5 centimeters. The matchstick, though it is lighted, we find that the candle, the flame of the candle, does not get lighted. The reason is that the air that is in between the wick of the candle and the matchstick which is lighted, that's a poor conductor. So the heat from the matchstick does not get transferred to the wick of the candle, and therefore the wick does not reach what is known as the ignition temperature, and as a result it does not get lighted. There are various applications of conductors and insulators in our daily life. One of that is when it comes to the various cooking utensils, the pans and so on. It is a common experience, it is something that we observe pretty common, is that the handles of such utensils, these are generally made up of materials like say ebonite or more common materials like wood and plastics. The reason is that this part of the utensil these are generally made up of various metals which are good conductors of it, and that is necessary for the food to be cooked properly. But so that we can handle the utensils properly, we can hold them, there needs to be the handles which has to be thermal insulators, which should not be as heated as the metals, otherwise we will get various kind of burns on our skin. So therefore these handles are generally made up of such kind of insulators. But as I said, the cooking vessels themselves, that is, if I look into this part, the cooking utensil or the cooking vessels themselves, they are made up of good quality of substances or metals which are good conductors of it, because that leads to better heat absorption and thus better cooking. Similarly, if we look into another application, say for example the automobile radiators. So in this automobile radiators, there is a component of it which are called the copper tubes. So what is the function of the copper tubes? The copper tube, what it does is, when the engine gets heated up, the water surrounding the engine, that also gets heated up. The copper tube absorbs and conducts away that hot water, the heat from that hot water, away from the engine. The cooling coils of copper are therefore used in these automobile radiators, and it's not that it's used only in automobiles. They also find applications in various refrigerators and air conditions. So suppose like this is the engine, say this is the engine, and in order to cool the engine, there are these various kind of pipes surrounding the engine which contains the water. And water, as you will study in higher classes, has got a very high specific heat capacity, because of which it can absorb a lot of heat without getting substantially heated up and thus cool the engine. So once the water has already absorbed that heat now needs to get out of the system of the automobile. As a result, this kind of pipes, they're generally made up of copper. The tubes are made up of copper. So the copper, being a good conductor, readily absorbs that heat from the water and gives it out to the surroundings. Then there are certain boxes known as the ice boxes. These ice boxes are generally used, as the name suggests, to carry ice. And in these ice boxes, we find that there are two walls. So that is to say that the ice boxes are double walled. So what is the purpose of that? The purpose is like if there is ice cubes inside, since they are double walled, in the space between the two walls we have got air. And air, as you just saw above, is a poor conductor of heat. So even if the outside temperature in the environment is high, that heat, this air, prevents from getting transferred inside the box, as a result of which these ice cubes which are inside, they do not melt quickly. In the countries like Russia, Siberia, or even in Alaska or the polar regions, where there are certain people who have to live in those regions, and I hope you have studied this maybe in your lower classes, that they make this kind of structures, okay, and this kind of structures are called the igloos. So these people live in this kind of igloos. And what are the igloos made up of? The igloos are constructed from snow. So it is something which is available abundantly in those areas. So one of the things about snow is that a lot of air is trapped inside the snow, and as a result, this snow does not allow the heat which is present inside the igloo to go out. in the temperature outside is very very cold. It's like 0 degrees Celsius or even lower. So the heat which is inside the igloos, the snow prevents that from escaping outside. As a result, the people can stay warm. So these are the various reasons. Also like wearing woolen clothes and so on. The reason is the same. The woolen clothes, they trap air, and once they trap air, that air acts as a poor conductor, so it does not allow our body heat to go outside during the winter season, and so we stay heated up. Having done with such practical applications of conductors and insulators, we will now look into the next process in which heat gets transferred, and that process is convection. So convection is that mode of heat transfer which cannot take place in solids. It has to take place in fluids, and the reason is because in convection the molecules are no longer just vibrating and remaining fixed at their position, but also they are moving from their position from one part of the fluid to another. So in order to see how convection happens, we shall look into an experiment, a practical experiment. So suppose we have got a beaker like this, and it contains some amount of water, and that beaker is say kept on some stand, and from this lower part, using some kind of burner or something, some amount of heat is provided to this water in the beaker. So before we start heating, we will drop crystals of certain substances. We will drop crystals of certain substances. And what is the substance? The substance is potassium permanganate, that is KMnO4. These KMnO4 crystals, the potassium permanganate crystals, we drop it into the water which is contained in the beaker, and then we start heating. What happens is, with time, these crystals, they start dissolving in water. We heat the water using a very small flame, and what is observed is that these crystals which are present in the lower part of the water, KMnO4, the purpose of using them is that once they dissolve in water, they produce a kind of a color. The color is generally a tint of purple, a tint of violet, like that. And one can easily see water which is like bluish or like violet in color, rising up like this and again settling down, rising up and settling down. Now obviously it does not mean that this process happened because potassium permanganate was added. This process happens all the time, whether or not we have such crystals added to the water or not. This is exactly the process of convection. The water in the lower part, after absorbing the heat from this source, it gets heated up, and it is a tendency for all kind of fluids that when they are heated up, they will rise up. This is tendency of fluids. And the water in this upper part, that is comparatively cooler than this lower part, because the lower part is in direct contact with the source of heat, but the upper part is not so, and therefore cooler fluids, they always move down. So that is what happens. The water which is in this part, which is heated, that moves up, and in order to occupy the space which is vacated by this water moving up, cooler water from the top comes down and takes its place. And that happens not just for water but all kind of fluids. But the benefit of this experiment is, since we used these potassium permanganate crystals, and the crystals, when they dissolved in water, they produced this purple coloration. As a result of that coloration, it was visible to us that how the water molecules actually move. Convection does not take place in solids, it can only take place in fluids, that is liquids and gases, because in solids, you have studied this probably in the previous chapter of matter, that the various molecules, they are pretty closely packed with each other. Their interatomic forces, the interatomic forces are so high that they cannot break these forces and move apart. And for convection to happen, the molecules must move. So convection is a process that cannot take place in any kind of solids. It has to take place in fluids, that is liquids and gases. And there are various applications of convection that we get to see in our daily life. The most common application is the occurrence of the sea breeze and the land breeze. So, if you are familiar with this concept of sea breeze and land breeze, what is it? So basically, if I just illustrate it, suppose I draw this land masses. And say I have this sea in front of it. And say this is during night. And say this is during day. And this is the water here, and this is the land. So what happens is, during daytime, land always gets heated up faster than water and also cools down faster than water. So during daytime, the land gets heated up faster than water. So the air which is present above the land, that also gets heated up, because the heat from the land gets transferred to that air, and hot air rises up, so this air rises up. Now the partial vacuum which is created here because of this air rising up, in order to fill that, the comparatively cooler air which is present above the water, that is above the sea, flows there. So during daytime, we therefore see winds or breezes blowing from the sea towards the land. This is called sea breeze. But water, just as it gets heated up slowly, it also cools down slowly. So after the entire day's heat, now the water is hot at night, but the land, it has cooled down quickly. So now the water, which is the air which is present above water, that is hot and that rises up. So now, in order to fill this place, cooler air which is present atop the land, that flows in. So at night we get winds or breezes blowing from the land towards the sea. So this is the land breeze. And this is not just limited to sea breeze and land breezes. On a bigger scale, such kind of motions are happening throughout our planet, and we call them the various ocean currents, and then there are the various air currents as well. And these ocean currents and air currents, they are very much responsible for survival of not just human beings but a lot of species. They play a very vital role in, number one, the seasons. Number two, they play a very important role in the survival of various species of fishes and coastal animals. And we somehow, via the food chain, are dependent on these as well. So it plays an important role in our survival as well. Another application of the convection current is that one finds that if, say, you have a factory like this, the chimneys are fitted near the top of the factories. This is where the chimneys are fitted. They are always fitted near the top of the factories. What's the reason for fitting the chimneys near the top of the factories? The reason is, like, whatever process is happening inside the factory, it's producing this hot air, and hot air has the tendency to rise up. So the hot air that escapes from the top of the chimneys. Similarly, in our rooms, the ventilators, they are placed near the top, and there is a kind of observation here. If we make very clearly, suppose if this is one of the walls of our room, we find that the AC, the air conditioner, they are placed near the ceiling, that's the top of the room. But if you have a room heater, then the room heater is generally placed near the floor of the room. The reason is, the AC produces cold air, and cold air has the tendency that, because it's cold, that is to say, it has got a higher density, so it's not light, it's heavy, and so it will have this tendency to move down and spread into the entire room. But room heater, on the other hand, it produces hot air generally during the winter seasons, and hot air has a tendency to rise up. So it rises up and heats up the entire room. Placing an AC near the ceiling or a room heater, an AC near the floor or a room heater near the ceiling won't serve any purpose. Because if we say, for example, place a room heater near the ceiling, it produces hot air, but hot air will have a tendency to go up, it won't come down. So the people who are living in here at the lower portion, they will feel cold as it is, because the hot air will never reach them. The third method in which transfer of heat can take place is radiation. And this is a unique method of heat transfer, because radiation is that method of heat transfer which does not require any material medium for the heat transfer to take place. The heat gets transferred from the hot body to cold body directly without heating the space in between. And the best example for this can be found out in our solar system only. So this is our planet, the planet Earth, and what I have denoted in red, that's the sun. And in between the sun and the planet we have the vast space, and space is mainly vacuum. Its density is pretty low, so we can say that it's vacuum. Yet the heat from the sun, it reaches the earth every day, every second of the day, and it is responsible for all the life nourishing activities that take place in the earth. So how do the heat gets transferred from this hot body, that is the sun, to the cold body, that is the earth, when there is almost no medium, that is vacuum, in between sun and earth? So it cannot be conduction or convection where molecules are moving, because there are no such molecules in the vast space. It's empty. So it has to be radiation, where the heat gets transferred directly from hot body to cold body without heating the space in between. And therefore, since it does not heat the space in between, this is the fastest mode of heat transfer among the three. The radiation or the radiant energy, it always travels from the hot body to the cold body along straight lines in the form of waves. And these waves can pass through vacuum, just like light waves does. So if I represent, say I represent a hot body and I represent a cold body. So here I have a cold body and here I have a hot body. The heat travels from the hot body to the cold body along straight lines, and when it travels along these straight lines, it does so in the form of waves, like this. It is much similar in its propagation to the propagation of light waves or electromagnetic waves. Just for now, let us know that when radiation or heat transfer happens through radiation, it is the fastest mode of transfer, and the radiant energy, what is getting traveled? The radiant energy is getting traveled, and this radiant energy travels in straight lines in the form of these waves, and these waves can pass through vacuum. Obviously, if there is any medium, then also the waves can pass, but it can also pass through vacuum. As a matter of fact, objects which are like dull or black colored, they are good absorbers of radiant heat. In fact, any kind of black colored surface, any kind of black colored surface or black colored object is the best absorber of radiant heat. And any kind of objects whose surfaces are very shiny or whose surfaces are like white in color, for those kind of surfaces we can say that they are poor absorbers of radiant energy. So black colored surfaces are the best absorbers of radiant energy, and any surface which is shiny or white in color, those are poor absorbers of radiant energy. And there are various applications of these black and polished surfaces which we observe in our daily life. The base of the cooking utensils, if there are various utensils, the pans or so, the base of the cooking utensils, those are generally made black so that they can absorb the heat from the flame on which they are being used to cook anything. They can absorb that heat maximum because the black surfaces are best absorbers of radiant energy. But also the inside of the cooking vessel, that is where the food actually gets cooked, those parts are kept shiny, so that because these are shiny surfaces are poor radiators, so there is minimum loss of heat by radiation. There is minimum loss of heat by radiation. Shiny surfaces are poor absorbers of radiant energy, and therefore we can also say that they are poor radiators of radiant energy, that is they give off less amount of heat as well. Whereas black surfaces, they are good absorbers of radiant energy, that is they absorb a lot of radiant energy. Also they are good radiators of heat as well, that is if a black body is heated, it also gives off energy at a high rate. And it is for same reason it is pretty obvious that if the weather is during summer or it's a hot weather, we prefer wearing white or light colored clothes. We prefer wearing white or light colored clothes. Whereas if the season is like winter or so, when we are feeling cold, we wear dark colored or black colored clothes, because of the same reason that blacks absorb the energy and during winter we want to stay heated up, whereas white or light colored surfaces, they lose energy, they are poor absorbers, and so in summer we want to keep ourselves cool, so we want to lose such energy. We do not want the surfaces to absorb such energy. So in the next class we shall start from the thermos flask.